Number 1. Audrey Berk. Audrey Jean Good Berk, age 20, vanished from Reedsburg, Wisconsin on July 7, 1962. Audrey was married to Ronald Berk in 1957, at the age of 15, and the couple had 2 young children. Ronald was reportedly abusive, and Audrey had filed a complaint against him shortly before her disappearance, claiming that he had beaten her, threatened her life, and kept 2 guns in the trunk of his car. Audrey was supposed to pick up a paycheck from a local woolen mill, and left her children at home with their father. She never returned. The family's 14-year-old babysitter later claimed that she and Audrey had hitchhiked to Madison, where they caught a Greyhound bus to Indianapolis, Indiana. The babysitter stated that she turned herself in as a runaway, and that Audrey told her she would never return, then disappeared around a corner near the bus stop. Audrey's family could not fathom that she would ever leave her children voluntarily. Ronald Berk, Audrey's husband, reportedly passed a polygraph at the time of her disappearance, and contacted several people inquiring about her whereabouts. He later remarried, and passed away in 2006. For anyone who might be researching this case, it is useful to know that Ronald's brother also married an Audrey, thus 2 Audrey Berks. Since Audrey was only 20, I would assume that her children were very young, too young to remember whether their father had actually been at home with them while Audrey was away. I think the babysitter should be talked to again. She may have been an impressionable, scared, 14-year-old at the time, who would have said what she was told to say. I don't know if the fact that the babysitter turned herself in as a runaway in Indianapolis was ever confirmed with Indianapolis law enforcement, or if this was just her statement. Surely the babysitter's parents would remember if their daughter was returned to them from another state. There also appears to be no confirmation of whether Audrey actually picked up her paycheck that day. In recent years, an informant came forward, pointing investigators to an area where he believed Audrey's remains would be found. An extensive search, which included the use of a well-known search dog, was executed. However, the dog handler later admitted to having planted bones in the past, for her dog to find. In order to boost her reputation, they were no longer considered credible after that. I do not know if the area has been searched again. If it hasn't, I hope it will be. Audrey would be about 72 years old now. The babysitter would be in her 60s. Audrey's case remains unsolved. Number 2. Bonnie Ledford. Bonnie Ledford, age 20, disappeared from Dedham, Maine in 1980. This case is rather backwards. In the majority of missing persons cases, you have a family pleading for answers. You have the circumstances of the person's disappearance. The mystery is what ultimately happened to them. In this case, law enforcement has a pretty good idea of what happened to Bonnie, but they don't have a family to consult, and they don't have the circumstances of how she disappeared. Without a DNA sample from a family member, this case cannot be put to rest. In 2001, a hunter stumbled onto a partial skull near Green Lake in Dedham. It appeared to have been there for several years. A further search uncovered part of a spine, and a foot as well. The remains are believed to be of a woman in her 20s. Near the remains, photographs and newspapers were found, but the years of exposure to the elements rendered them useless for identification purposes. Bonnie's maiden name was Richardson, and she married in Michigan and moved to Dedham, Maine with her husband. The police did talk to her husband, and learned that they had been estranged by the time Bonnie went missing. Law enforcement stated that her husband was cooperative, but was not able to provide any information that would be useful. There still does not appear to be any DNA on file. Her husband married again in about 1981, and passed away in 2010. Where is this girl's family? Bonnie would be 52 years old now. Her parents, most likely, are at least in their 70s. It is unknown if she had siblings, or even where she grew up, though her late husband was born in Detroit, so that's a possibility. I feel like this is a race against the clock, and I really hope this case, as well as the UIDs, can be resolved soon. Number 3. Seema Chappell. Seema Beatrice Chappell, age 18, went missing from Hawthorne, California in early September 2004. It always perplexes and annoys me when a case is being investigated by a completely different city, or even state, in some cases, from where the person went missing. Firstly, it causes confusion. If you Google her name, you will be convinced that she went missing from Antioch, California, near San Francisco. which is 360 miles north of Hawthorne, near Los Angeles. Even the California Department of Justice website states that she is missing from Antioch. If a member of law enforcement were to locate someone, alive or otherwise, that could be Seema, they probably would not make the connection, as they'd be looking for women who went missing from the Los Angeles area. Secondly, I'd like to know how, exactly, the police department of the small town of Antioch investigates this woman who was last known to be in Hawthorne, California. Somehow I can't see them trekking down to Los Angeles and interviewing people who might have seen her. That said, here is the little that we know about her case. Seema Chappell was last heard from, by her family in Antioch, on either September 6 or 7, of 2004. She was in Hawthorne, California at the time, and was supposed to contact them again with Amtrak information for her return home. They never heard from her. I am sure I read somewhere, at some point, that she had been visiting friends or family members in Hawthorne, but I can no longer locate that source. Hate it when that happens. In any case, it's my opinion that she had to have gone to Hawthorne to visit someone. It's just not a destination that someone would likely choose to travel to, alone, for a solo vacation. Los Angeles, maybe, but I'd never even heard of Hawthorne prior to researching this case. Do you see the problem here? All of the last known information is coming from her family in Antioch, and not from the person or people who were last with her. Were these people uncooperative? Does her family not know who she was with? Or was it just never looked into? Since the Hawthorne police are not involved, has she ever voluntarily disappeared before? Was she having problems in Antioch? Did she ever purchase an Amtrak ticket? Did she have a cell phone? If so, did they check phone calls she made and received while in Hawthorne? I've read a number of accounts from family members of the missing, with regard to their struggles in trying to get law enforcement to take the report. Some have just had to file their report with whatever agency was willing to accept it. I don't know if that was the case here. I truly hope she is alive and well somewhere, and that she will contact law enforcement to let them know she is okay. It appears that her family really misses her and would like to know she is alive and well, even if her whereabouts are not disclosed. However, because anything is possible, I wish this case would be placed in the hands of someone who can reasonably investigate it. Number 4. Wendy Abrams Nishikai. Wendy Jamie Abrams Nishikai, age 21, went missing from Berkeley, California on October 31, 1989. This will likely be one of the shortest blog entries I ever write. Wendy Jamie Abrams Nishikai was last seen in Berkeley on October 31, 1989. That's all her profile says. After digging a bit more, I learned that she had been a student at UC Berkeley, and that she had a 2-year-old daughter at the time of her disappearance, that was left behind. It was also Halloween. California Department of Justice lists her as voluntary missing, and it doesn't appear that anyone is looking for her. It's worth noting that California DOJ lists 85-year-olds with Alzheimer's as voluntary missing. Various searches yield no sign of her. I am skeptical of the idea that she's been voluntary missing for 24 years. If she has been, she's done an amazing job of covering her tracks, considering that in 1989, no one saw the internet coming. She was 21, she was college educated and had a young daughter. She has 2 older brothers. Where are you, Wendy? Are you relaxing on the beaches of Mexico, sipping margaritas, and laying low? Were you having problems in late 1989 that were just too overwhelming to handle? Did someone take you away from your family on that Halloween night? Such a shame that although people care, we don't know where to look, since there is just no information on what might have happened to you. Come home soon, Wendy. Number 5. Nancy Jason. Nancy Lynn Jason, age 18, was last seen in Bethesda, MD on July 20, 1977. Nancy was a follower of a religious group called Divine Light Mission in 1977. The group touted their meditation techniques as a cure for everything from drug addiction to medical ailments. Nancy suffered from epilepsy. Premies, as the followers were called, generally lived in group quarters, known as Premee houses. Nancy lived in the Premee house in Bethesda, MD in the spring and summer of 1977. She was being treated by Premee doctors Robert Holowitz and John Horton, as were the other 7-10 Premees she resided with. It is believed that this particular Premee house catered specifically to those with medical issues. More information about the Divine Light Mission can be found here. Nancy was last seen as she prepared for a trip to Florida to attend one of their meetings. The items she had packed, including her clothing, money, and camera, were left in her residence. Nancy was known to hitchhike, although it's unlikely that she traveled to Florida without her luggage. Dr. Robert Hulowitz, one of the doctors who had been treating Nancy at the time of her disappearance, lost his medical license in 1993, after several female patients complained that he had sex with them. Hulowitz reportedly told his patients that he was the embodiment of God, on a mission to bring light and love into the world by fathering children. One of his patients reported that Dr. Hulowitz had warned her that patients who had displeased him in the past had met untimely deaths. Law enforcement is looking for information on a Caucasian man, in his 30s, who was hanging around the Primy house in 1977. He was apparently there in an attempt to recruit members for his own following. They would also like anyone who was at the Bethesda, MD Primy house in 1977 to contact Detective Joseph Medano, with the Montgomery County PD at joseph.medano@montgomerycounty.gov. Any Primys out there who lived in Bethesda or attended a meeting in Florida in the summer of 1977? Does anyone remember this girl? I found this ID, located in 1979 in Prince George County, MD. She was not the victim of an intentional crime, but was hit by a car, apparently while hitchhiking. The victim is described as white, aged between 18 and 29. The weight is way off. The ID is said to weigh 173 pounds, compared to Nancy's 124 pounds. I can't help but notice a resemblance in the shape of the face, however, and I suppose it is possible to gain 50 pounds in 2 years. We may never know if this is Nancy, however. No DNA sample was taken from the ID, although dentals are available. Nancy's family has submitted DNA, but her dental records are not available. Unless law enforcement is willing to exhume the body, this may be a dead end. Her case remains unsolved. Number 6. Simone Riding. Simone Stephanie Riding, age 17, was last seen in Sherborne, MA on September 2, 1977. She left her job at the Rainbow Restaurant, telling friends she was going to hitchhike to a relative's home in Cape Cod, where she would meet her mother. She never arrived. In 1986, an elderly man by the name of Henry C. Tews came forward, stating that he had given Simone a ride, but stated it was on the date after her disappearance. Tews stated that he was near the 128 and 109 intersection. When he was pulled over by a state trooper, he claimed that Simone was in the back of the trooper's car, and that the trooper had asked Tews to drive her the rest of the way to Cape Cod, which was where he was headed. He said that she called herself Sissy and he dropped her off at the Hyannis Rotary, and last saw her walking toward a restaurant, either a Ground Round or Howard Johnson's. There is nothing to suggest that Tews had anything to do with her disappearance. He was 79 years old and he did not appear to have any criminal record. He is now deceased. In 2009, a news report aired on a local news channel, and during the segment, images of case documents appeared briefly on screen. These documents contained additional details about her case. However, some corners and edges were out of the camera's view, so it was not possible to read the documents in their entirety. Below is what I was able to make out from the handwritten report, as given by Simone's mother. Represents breaks in the readable wording. The top of the report contained the phrase Department of Corrections, although it was not the title of the report. To speak to ... to see if he ... find out why he had ... to her. He said that he stopped ... cause she had stopped writing to him ... as knowing where she was, he had no idea and was quite concerned to find out she was missing. While I was there, I learned that Simone had a special visiting privilege for one day that afternoon. I waited around to see if she showed up, but she didn't. Upon my arrival to the Sherborne police station, I was informed by Morrow that his daughter Kim had picked up Simone 10 or 2 days prior to this date, at of Washington Street and Maple Street, and drove her to in Framingham. From another report, apparently about the man's statement in 1986, broken up, and only a small section partially visible, I interviewed Mr. Q. Engineer for Carling Brewery prior to born on Buttermilk Bay. Route 128 and route to Mason. At approx 6: by a state trooper. Been looking. I am wondering if she was incarcerated at the time, although reports say she was last seen at the Rainbow Restaurant, her place of employment. I'm not sure what a special visiting privilege for one day would mean. It could also explain why she was in a state trooper car, if she was released from somewhere for the day with a police escort. It is worth noting again that Mr. Tews stated that he picked her up on September 3rd, a day after she was last seen at Rainbow Restaurant. My take on the other jumbled pieces of the report is that her mother was trying to find out why someone had stopped by to see her unexpectedly, and he said it was because she had stopped writing to him. So it could also have made sense that Simone was writing to and trying to visit someone who was incarcerated, and had a special privilege to do so. But that would mean the report probably didn't say stopped by, if he was incarcerated. It kind of looks like her mother was saying she had information that Simone was scheduled to visit an incarcerated friend, and Simone's mother went to the jail to see if she showed up. Hard to say. I am curious as to the statement about Simone being in the back of a state trooper's car. Did police normally pick up hitchhikers back then? Was it ever confirmed that Mr. Tews was stopped for a violation on that date? And was the trooper who stopped him ever questioned about why Simone was in the car? Did Simone go by the nickname Sissy, as the man stated his writer did? Did anyone who knew her have any knowledge of what the visiting privilege was about? If she was dropped off at Hyannis Rotary, would her relative's house been in walking distance? Or would she have hitchhiked? Simone's mother is now deceased. Searching the web indicates that she had friends, who continue to search for answers. She had friends. Number 7. Gloria Baird. Gloria Jean Baird, age 23, was last seen in Atlanta, Georgia in December 1969. Gloria attended Glenn Academy in Brunswick, Georgia, and was reported to have dated Navy men while in high school. Just after completing high school, Gloria got married, and gave birth to a daughter. In the fall of 1967, when her daughter was still an infant, Gloria left the baby with her husband, and traveled to New Orleans, LA. She sent her husband a letter, requesting a divorce, in January 1968. The letter was sent from 930 Jackson Avenue No. 3, New Orleans, LA. The divorce was finalized in November 1968. On February 4, 1969, Gloria married another man, but the marriage lasted only 10 days. A petition for divorce was granted on February 14. Gloria's address on the divorce documents was in Atlanta, GA. The man Gloria married was later convicted of a wide array of crimes, from DUI to rape, as far as can be found. However, his crimes did not begin until after he and Gloria were divorced. He is now deceased. Records show that he was incarcerated at the time of her disappearance. In August 1969, Gloria enlisted in the Army, using the surname Goodman, from her second marriage. In December, she traveled back to Atlanta on an approved leave from the Army. She was last seen at a party on or about December 31, 1969. Gloria was reportedly associated with another address in New Orleans sometime in 1969, although it is unclear whether this was before or after the Atlanta address was used on her divorce papers. Only one person who was at the party is known, and she has not been responsive to the pleas of Gloria's daughter for help. All contact between this individual and Gloria's daughter have been through a third party. She did apparently tell someone a while back that Gloria had left the party with 3 men, but no additional details were provided. Gloria's Volkswagen Bug was found somewhere in Atlanta following her disappearance, and was returned to Gloria's father, who held title to the vehicle. Gloria's father sold it to his brother, who in turn gave it to his daughter. There was no known investigation done with regard to the vehicle, and no one in the family can remember exactly where the vehicle was located. As a result of Gloria's disappearance, she was classified as a deserter from the Army, and received a dishonorable discharge. Gloria's parents remember the FBI investigating her disappearance back in 1970, but it is unknown whether that was due to her so-called AWOL status, or if it was in regard to a missing persons report from a family member. The Atlanta FBI office, when contacted by Gloria's daughter, denied having investigated her disappearance, and have been unable to provide any information. We are looking for residents who lived at 1231 Druid Street in Atlanta, or 207 N Broad in New Orleans, in 1969. The 1231 Druid PL address was listed on her divorce records, while her soon-to-be ex-husband was listed at a separate address. 1231 Druid Street is a 7-bedroom house, currently used as a business, according to Zillow, so it is highly doubtful that she was living there alone. We are also attempting to make direct contact with the woman who saw Gloria at the party, the night she was last seen. I do not want to name her here, but by viewing my sources, you can easily find it. Gloria's daughter has been searching for years, and longs for the day that she can finally learn what happened to her mother after she left that party in December 1969.